Hi, we're here with Eric Blumhagen. He is running for Seattle School District Director, District number 1. Would you like to go ahead with your 2-minute introduction?
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to seek your endorsement. I'm a dedicated public school parent. Both of my kids have been in Seattle Public Schools since kindergarten. One is graduated and is on at University of Washington. The other is a sophomore at Ingram High School. For the past decade, I've been fairly active in Seattle Public Schools, speaking before the board, volunteering in classrooms since kindergarten, and I realized my student's kindergarten teacher was a superhero to get all those kids going in the same direction. Sitting on district advisory committees, particularly around capacity management, boundaries, etc. And sitting on PTA and PTO boards as well. I've been active in other sort of citywide issues as well. Was on the Speaker's Bureau for the last rounds of the levy, for the operations and capital levy, and was also on the Speaker's Bureau against the Charter Schools Initiative. I see some big issues that the Seattle Public Schools is facing. Accountability is a major one. There are way too many cases where district staff are not following the law, are not following the district policy. Transparency is another one. There's a lot of things that the public doesn't know that we should know. How many people work at the John Stanford Center, for example? We don't know that. It's not public information. Flexibility. I think we can serve almost all of our students at their neighborhood schools, but we need flexibility in the system to be able to accommodate those who are better served at other schools. So, Eric Blumhagen, running for Seattle School Board, and I'd be honored to have your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, excellent. And I believe we left off on Lori?
It's me. Thanks for coming today. What steps can you take as a member of the school board to work toward racial equity in the schools?
I think the most important thing is to focus on the word equity there. And where I see that is focusing on supports for the students who need the most and are furthest from educational justice. So one program I'm especially proud of at Ingram is the Bright Futures program. It was just featured on King 5, where they're providing a space to meet the needs of homeless students and housing insecure students. And that's whether that's food, clothing, athletics support, sponsorships, or athletic team fees, whatever it is that the student needs, and focusing on what the student actually needs and not what the district or welfare system or other things is set up to provide. And we've just through funding from the PTO, we're going to be able to expand that program dramatically. I'd like to bring that kind of a program out to all of Seattle Public Schools. I don't think it can be funded citywide through parents, but I think we have donors who will be willing to fund that sort of thing and provide our own homegrown wraparound services. I think we also need to look at, continue the focus on disproportionate discipline, make sure that we're not, if two students commit the same infraction, the response shouldn't be different depending on the color of their skin. And that happens all too often. I think we're getting better, but that's another area where we need to be vigilant and we need to be getting better.
Thank you. Jason?
Yes. Given the ongoing financial challenges facing Seattle Public Schools, how would you manage the district budget while supporting teachers and protecting classroom services?
I think this is an area where that transparency issue really comes in. We have some idea of where the dollars are being spent, but we don't have an idea of where where the people and headcount, particularly in the district is. I really want to be able to look at the district as a whole and say, okay, we have about the same number of students as we did 3 or 4 years ago. Where do we have major increases in number of staff? And if that's not in the schools, then we need to really think about, is that really serving our schools? Another thing that's a major issue right now is the Amplify K through 8 science curriculum. That's a rental program where we're talking about spending $9 million for 8 years, I believe. And then at the end of that, we don't have anything. We don't have any books left over. That's just basically renting the software. And I think of that and what we could do with, 80, 90 person years, teacher years over that same period of time, 10 teachers per year. That seems like a crazy amount of money to spend on something where we don't have anything coming back to us, or we don't have any permanent assets that we can hold, like a textbook, we can keep using from year to year. So I think those are some areas where we want to look, and then we need to keep lobbying the state legislature to do their job. The state legislature funds a grand total of 9 nurses through the Seattle public schools, 1 per 5,000 students. That's not basic education. That's not funding basic education, and we need to hold their feet to the fire for that.
Thank you.
So students in special education continue to not receive the education that they are morally and legally entitled to. How would you ensure that students, educators, including paraprofessionals, and schools are supported both with policy and funding?
So for the funding, I think we need to hold the legislature's feet to the fire. They put more money into special ed this year in this budget, but it's still not remotely covering the needs. And we need to make sure that the state is actually covering the needs. That issue of special education students not receiving services is one that's dear to my heart. Our neighbor actually had that situation where they said, they went in and said, my student is entitled to these services to the school, and they were basically told to talk to the hand until they had their next door neighbor was an expert from UW and went into the meeting and said, no, you really actually have to provide these services, and here's the chapter and verse from the district in the law that says you have to do that. And then they finally backed down and grudgingly gave them some more support. I think we need to shine a light on those problems and make sure that people are held accountable. I think it would be a really good idea to make it part of the superintendent's evaluation. Are we giving these, particularly special education students, but other students, the educational services that they're legally and morally entitled to? Because what gets measured gets done. And I think that's a big part of how to do it. There's a limit to how much you can do as a board member because we only have control over one employee, but that's the employee at the top, and I think we can make some changes roll down.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Clayton?
If elected, will you maintain the Seattle Public Schools' current policy of closing new charter schools in the district? Secondly, how would you advocate against privatization in our school district?
Yes, to the first question. I have been against charter schools from the beginning. I believe they drain money out of Seattle public schools and public schools nationwide. And they don't even deliver on the promise of giving better outcomes. And they're open to some really terrifying things. I know a person who was on the board of a charter school in Idaho, and his was the deciding vote at that board for not arming the teachers. And he levered himself off of his deathbed from cancer to get into that vote because he knew it was that important. And he said that the charter school industry attracts all kinds of flat earthers and other, people bringing religious instruction into schools. It's not a system that I think we should be supporting. I don't think it's a system Seattle would support. How do we advocate against privatization? I think that gets to the flexibility point in my platform. Seattle had the equivalent of charter schools long before the charter school movement. We called them option schools, and they were within the district, and they were within the, they were staffed by union teachers, and they had alternative approaches, and they served some, students who needed those services. They served those very well. There's a lot of enrollment problems where the schools are being told this is your top end, and we're not going to move any more students in because that might mean you get another teacher. And that's silly, because if the students want to go there, we should, encourage the students to go there. And that's how we fight against privatization, is support those schools.
Thank you. And now we'll go to follow-up questions, which have a 1-minute response time. Summer, I saw your hand first.
So just kind of piggybacking on what you just said about enrollment. So how do you propose to improve both the enrollment services, which have been very wonky with these wait lists that nobody can understand, and also our district's capacity management in a growing city to address Seattle's changing needs and also to address equity issues within Seattle?
So I will really push on the district to follow their policy and move wait lists. I don't understand how a newly opened school like Lincoln can have a wait list of 50 people when it opens up. 2 years ago, Rainier Beach had a wait list. It was only one student, but there was still a wait list for a school that they're trying to improve, trying to increase enrollment. So we'll, push with policy and again, holding the district's feet to the fire on that. I think we need to have people on the capacity management and enrollment side. We need to have people who are focusing on, who have experience with the numbers. We have Eagle Staff, which is right next to Whitman. Whitman is crying for students. Eagle Staff is overstuffed. This doesn't make sense. We need to make some changes so we fix that.
Thank you. Next, my list was Matt.
I've got a three-part result really quick. It's mostly in regards to the question 3 about special education, and also kind of touches into your answer on question 1. So my first question is, do you know, just ballpark, how many students in the district currently have IEPs? As a follow-up to that, you talked about discipline based on race. And then you also talked later about making sure students were getting their IEP needs in regards to education. Do you feel that current disciplinary policy is competent on disability issues? And my third question, I'll just keep it on those two because it's a long time.
Okay. I don't know how many students have IEPs, and that's thank you for letting me know something I need to know for the future, and I'll note that down. For discipline, I think that discipline for special education has the same fraught history as discipline, disproportionate discipline for minorities, and I think that's something that we need to work out how we're going to make that better and make sure that we're being responsive and compassionate in our discipline for every student.
I want to ask a quick follow-up to that, just for clarification. You keep saying special education. Obviously, students with IEPs could be in special education classes, but do you think that most students with IEPs are in the general population?
Yeah.
They have a disability, but they're not segregated out.
Yes, absolutely.
So, when you say special education, are you talking only about IEP students in special ed, or are you talking IEP students in general education?
I'm talking about students who are identified with an IEP or a 504 plan or other, required services who are, whether they're in a separate special education class or in the general population or mainstream.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Ben?
I'd like to revisit something you said about housing insecure students and students without housing. What would you do to make sure these students have the resources they need to succeed?
We need to pull the community in to help support them. I think we need to identify the problem. We need to help manage the resources. The counselors and the teachers are on the front lines. They're the ones who know, they're probably the best ones to know in the district which students need support, and then we need to mobilize the community to support them. I think we showed at Ingram that we can mobilize the community. I think we need to expand those kinds of services out to the city as a whole, and not put it just on parents donating at the auction as well, but try to get it out to philanthropy, get it out to government services, etc.
Great, thanks. And Jason?
Yes, what are the differences between a 504 plan versus a IEP?
That is a very good question. I know that there are differences, but I don't know the details of the differences. If I say more than that, I would probably be wrong. So I know that there are two flavors of special education services, and I believe they can overlap as well.
Clayton?
Both of my sons went through school, Seattle schools. He's my older son, except for the last few years. One thing that's always bothered me, has bothered me for many years, about Seattle schools is the use of alternative schools. Because the district never talks about what the alternative is. The alternative, as far as I can see it, in my son's experience and in my experience as a parent, the alternative is mediocrity. And my younger son has paid for that dearly in ways that are beyond the scope of this conversation. But I wonder what your thinking is with respect to alternative schools within the district, because I think they've got a strategy in part of the district to keep middle-class people in the city and in public school, which is
So can I clarify the question before we start the time?
Sure.
Are you saying that the alternative school gave your son a mediocre education, or the general school that he went to an alternative school from was the
I'm saying when my younger son got to Roosevelt, first of all, the counselor said, Jonathan's
Okay, so we're
and my son said, how come you sent me to Summer?
Okay.
For all those people?
Okay. So
So no AP courses.
I think that gets to the issue of different needs for the different students. I think there's option schools all over the district that do different things very well. Whether you're talking about center school with focus on the arts, whether you're talking about Cleveland STEM with the STEM subjects, whether you're talking about Licton Springs with a native education focus. So I think you really need to look. The alternative there is that we're going outside, we're doing something that's different, and we as parents and students need to be educated about what that difference is and try to find the ones that work for us.
Great, thank you. We're out of time actually, so sorry. You can talk a little bit later. If you'd like to go ahead and give a 30-second wrap up, that would be great.
Okay, thanks so much for the opportunity to talk to you today. Again, my name is Eric Blumhagen. I'm working for transparency, accountability, and flexibility, and I really want to share knowledge. So find places where some schools are doing something really well, share that with all of the schools so that all of our schools can benefit from that. And I'd be honored to have your vote. Thank you.
Thank you.